And we are live. Hey, welcome everybody to Market Conversations. I'm your host, Jerry Hall. I am joined by my partner in crime, Mr. XRP Carolina. Hey, Carolina, say hello to the folks.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming in.
Right on. This is Crypto YouTube's first live stream show that has the functionality to bring you, the audience, into the studio, talk about the topics of the day, present a question, or just your commentary on what you think is happening. Tonight, we've got some prearranged topics that we'd like to throw on the table. I think this one right here, the old Bitcoin halving, that is on everybody's mind in one way or another. What's going to happen? We're going to discuss that in great detail. How about this? The XRP circulating supply. What is it? Well, our crack team on the chain did some back of the envelope calculations, and we have some numbers to present. We're going to get to that and a whole lot more right after this. Carolina, hit it.
And now, Jerry Hall and XRP Carolina on the chain.
Hey, and there we are. So, Carolina, I'm sure you've seen all through Twitter, all kinds of news articles, YouTube channels talking about this Bitcoin halving. Would you say it's a pretty pertinent topic?
I would say it is. It's pretty relevant to what we're hoping to see with the market. I'm hoping that it's a very, very positive thing towards XRP, but we will see. We will see. But I think it's pretty relevant.
Well, I can tell you, OTC's very own Chip did a short little 8-minute video on that today. It's right on our sister channel, the OTC Standard, link below, wink, wink, hint, hint, where he talked about, his thoughts on it. And I'll tell you, one of the interesting things about this space, and it really perplexes me at times, because you would think that behavioral patterns would develop. So it's funny, you take a look at the Bitcoin halving and you say, okay, this has happened, 3 previous times before. What were the consequences and timeframes surrounding those events? And you could extrapolate that something similar would happen this time. Well, what I have found in this space is that this space defies logic. This is sometimes absolutely maddening for the layman to really try to figure out what's going on. Now, personally, for me, what I've decided to do is I assign probabilities, right? So there's no certainties in this thing. When I look at the past and I see what Bitcoin has done in the halving, I can kind of extrapolate that there should be an increase in the retail price of the coin based off of a couple of factors. One, the mining rewards are cut in half. So there's going to be less Bitcoin being introduced into that retail market from miners selling their coins to either take profit or cover costs, electricity, new mining rigs, etc. However, there's another side to that token. Now, it's one I've gone into great detail with a bunch of different people. I've asked questions pertaining to, oops, that was me, pertaining to what was the other side of the coin. Now, very interesting that there are some folks out there that's saying this could have a very negative effect on Bitcoin. Instead of seeing a price appreciation, what we could actually see is a degradation in the security of Bitcoin, meaning less hashing power to secure the system, as a large portion of the overall Bitcoin mining power will have to shut down. If they're only receiving half of their Bitcoin to do their work and the price doesn't appreciate, the overhead will force a great many miners to go out of business, or at least shut down or switch to another profitable token. So with that being said, there is opinions out there. I want to know your opinions. Is there anybody in the audience that has a take on this Bitcoin halving, where they think this could go? I'm waiting for your thoughts. Oh, look at this. Bada bing, bada boom. Let's bring this young man in. Hello, sir. Can you hear me okay? Hello. Somehow you're muted. I can't hear you. There is a small toolbar at the bottom. You'll see it says mic, cam, stop cam, share screen, etc. Nope, cannot hear you. And this is one of the wonderful things about a live show, that you come into these things. Try it again. Try speaking. Nope, nada. Interesting. I'll tell you what. You have a link, right? You were provided a link to the show and you can hear me. So why don't we have you back out? I'll go ahead and leave studio and we'll have you pop back in. So this topic of the Bitcoin halving, I just think it's really an incredible thought experiment, right? To think about both this side of the coin and this side of the coin. Boy, I'll tell you, I know what I'd like to have happen. I'd like to see Bitcoin go on a glorious run and pull all these other incredible projects up with it. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if there's enough dry powder out there to put into this space to do it. Now, that's the retail side. Are there investors, right? The hedge funds, the family offices, the pension plans and university endowment funds? Yeah, are they out there? You bet. Have they been looking at this space? You bet. Are they allocating resources? I don't know. It's really hard to track some of these things, right? What do we have to really look at to see if the space is growing or not? Well, we have the overall market cap. That's an indication. There's also the number of wallets that are created, right? We take a look at wallet creation. Well, those numbers are up. We also have analytics as it pertains to Google for searches and things of that nature. So, I mean, we do have some tools. Looks like our caller came back. Let's give him another try. And I hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yes.
I can hear you great. Well, hello, Daniel. How are you tonight, man?
Doing fine. Thanks for inviting me. I'm sorry for the technical difficulty. Apparently with the phone, everything's just easier. So I'm going to go with that.
Well, isn't that the truth sometimes? So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what your spin is on this Bitcoin halving coming up.
Sure. So my name is Daniel Rojas. I'm an electronic engineer. I'm a Costa Rican, and I discovered Bitcoin about like 4 years ago, and I got really interested on that, and I've been kind of on the crypto space ever since. So yeah, glad to be here. And on the Bitcoin halving, so it's interesting because if you look at the chart, I mean, on the only two Bitcoin halvings that we have had, on the halving day per se, there's not really a lot of price action. there's lots of websites that say like Bitcoin got to like triple digit increase, like 100 200% or whatever, but it was like weeks or even months after like the actual event. So it kind of makes me wonder if the Bitcoin halving per se, that event, if it has like a lot of meaning to it, because you would imagine that on the actual day of the event, if the event per se is something meaningful, and something, the price would move, either up or down. But we haven't really seen that stuff. But it's I guess we'll see. The other thing, which may be kind of interesting, is like this is actually the first time that we're going into like a global kind of economic difficulty, and the Bitcoin halving is happening in the midst of it. So obviously Bitcoin, and crypto and everything in general, like oil prices, took a dump, but it's actually rebounding. And one of the things that I'm really impressed is that Bitcoin actually didn't even go under the all-time low of last year, which was like 3,500. So that to me alone is actually bullish.
Well, I'll tell you, Daniel, I have to agree with you. But there is this, it's like you made a point, and I don't know if this is really discussed enough, and that is we are in economic times that we've really never seen before, right? To try to price in or really understand how this global market is going to react based off of past history, it's just a different world we're in right now. There are a lot of people who would enter a Bitcoin position, maybe $100, $200, $1,000, something like that, who are keeping their money under their mattress right now because they're not totally sure what the next 6 months are going to look like. You know what I mean? It's really crazy. I'm curious, because a lot of the news and information I get is U.S. based, but you got your boots on the ground in Costa Rica, and you do a lot of Bitcoin meetups and things of that nature. Do you feel the retail person, that space in Latin America is getting larger or getting smaller as a direct result of this health pandemic thing?
I've seen, so with respect to like the existing community, I don't think that people are like getting away from the crypto space. As now, if I take a sample of say TikTok, which is kind of like my main social media right now, and the one that I'm thankfully growing, there seems to be some people actually wanting to know more about it, and actually on like my Facebook pages regarding Bitcoin and all that stuff, I've actually seen people try to like step in and trying to see if what's a good way to make money off of Bitcoin, even though like every asset actually took a hit in the price. But I see actually people like trying to see where can they actually make money, or at least just take maintain their purchasing power.
Very interesting. Now, I don't think the audience has seen, but I have got to see some of your TikTok stuff, and you did one about getting involved in Bitcoin, and you had these like different costumes and hats. You would the engineer, the investor, the this. Is it possible that you could play that on your phone and we would see that come over this link?
That would actually be awesome, wouldn't it?
I don't know if we can or can't. If not, you know what we can do?
Yeah.
I'm going to come right over here. And how could people go see some of the TikTok stuff you've done? Because it's extremely creative. and it's all crypto related. I mean, it's really cool stuff you did. So what is there, do you have a handle like you would on Twitter or something of that nature?
Yeah, I do. It's just like in TikTok, just type in crypto reds. So it's crypto, like, cryptocurrency, and reds as in the color, like REDS RED. I cannot even speak right now, but yeah, red's like in the color.
So take a look at the screen. Is that it?
Let's see. I should be looking at YouTube. Should I?
No, you look at the screen where you can see my face, like directly underneath my face.
I just see like your video feed in mine.
Oh, okay. I typed in crypto reds on TikTok.
Oh, yes, that you've typed it correctly. Yes.
Okay, crypto reds on TikTok. Folks, you gotta check that out. Daniel, very creative. So there is another aspect of this whole crypto BTC mining thing, right? The other side of this halving coin. And that is this conversation about miners and profitability. Now, you're in Costa Rica, and I know there have been a lot of Costa Ricans and folks in Latin America who've chose to mine Bitcoin as opposed to taking their paychecks and purchasing Bitcoin. Have you seen anything or heard anything from the miners that are in your social circles about what this halving could mean to them?
So when I actually got myself into mining, I was a lot more involved in it. That was probably a couple of years ago, and we had, a much more active crypto mining community back then. Since then, we've, like, most of us actually, and after, like the 2017 craze and into the 2018 bear market, lots of us just, like, turned off our equipment and, just, left it at that. But there's actually one Costa Rican company here that actually does, it's not cloud mining, it's hosted mining. So they actually, it's not really, like, I wouldn't call it a community. Well, at least, not in the sense that, I'm used to, but they actually are, bullish about it, even though, they would actually need to bullish on the price because, obviously that, the halving is gonna basically cut their hashing power in half. Right, because it's not their hashing power, it's their rewards, but like the math turns out basically the same, right? So I don't think that I think that it will be a while before the halving actually gets its bullish price, and that you can actually make as much money as like the calculator, the mining calculator profitability gives you right now before the halving, right? Because if like at the point of the halving, price being constant, your miner would mine half as much, and then to make up for that, well, you actually need price to double up, which is possible. And we wouldn't, see all-time highs. Like, well, actually, we would. I mean, like, for it to double, we would need to kind of go back to all-time highs, which is, gonna be a little harder than if it wouldn't be all-time highs, right? But yeah, I mean, they're kind of bullish in that sense. I'm not so much in that sense, but that's why I tell everybody, just like DCA, just like dollar cost average, buy a little bit of Bitcoin each and every month and give Bitcoin the chance of just letting it fly. I mean, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Agree. So I had, questions come up for me all the time. So I thought, like you thought, that if the reward is cut in half and the cost remains constant, then the price of Bitcoin has to increase, or a lot of miners are going to have to turn their rigs off. Now, that's a fair assessment, would you say?
I would, yeah.
Okay. So if that's a fair assessment, then taking that another step farther, it's fair to say that there probably will be a lot of smaller mining groups or individuals turning off their miners. Now, what kind of threat does that pose the incredible security of Bitcoin? Do you know of any? Do you think of anything?
I mean, it's as if you look at it from a standpoint of, you know, like more hash power equals more security. One of the, yeah, I mean, like a lot of miners are gonna, you know, like non-profitable miners are gonna turn off the equipment. But tell you the truth, Jerry, I don't think that a large percentage of the hashing of the global hashing power right now comes from the aggregate of a lot of decentralized retail miners.
That so there and there is the actual answer to the question. There aren't enough smaller groups or individual miners to make a difference. The large Chinese conglomerates, the Bitmains, etc., they rule the roost. They have the lion's share of the hashing power already without these smaller people turning off. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, and one of the things of that is actually a few months ago, I think Bitmain itself actually opened a mining farm on Texas. So, you know, they're not only the manufacturers of the miners, they're also, you know, they don't only make a sale, or they don't only make a profit from the sale of the machines, but they actually, you know, mine the machines because they have access, or they can negotiate access to cheap electricity. And I think, Jared, that's the reason that well, a lot of the retail miners don't actually pose a big percentage of the global hashing rate, just because of access to cheap electricity, which was the reason that a lot of, or you know, all of, you know, a lot, if not all, of the mining community here in Costa Rica just shut down their machines, because over here, you know, like normally, like it's like what, maybe 16 to 18 or sometimes 20 cents per kilowatt hour, which is prohibitively expensive.
Right. Well, it's good. You know, that's really interesting. I had the good fortune of interviewing a young man named Santiago Velez. He's the interview can be found on the OTC Standard. His business is about compute power. Now, obviously, a lot of compute is going into mining, and that's fine. You know, it's perfectly appropriate. And what he talked about was a strategy of putting the actual machines as close to the source of the power being generated, the power plant, therefore being able to reduce the transmission costs. Because I'll tell you, before my conversation with him, I had no idea that the cost of electricity that I, the end user, was paying, a large portion of that is in transmission costs, what they call transmission fees, which I guess are assigned for line maintenance, you know, other things of that nature within the electrical grid, right? So it would make sense if your rigs are closest to where the power is being generated, then you're going to get the cheapest electricity possible. Makes sense, right? So I don't know how many of these big behemoth mining companies are doing that, but I think it definitely poses an interesting conversation. And if you were ever to, like, if these guys ever decide to go public, it would be good to know, where are they, who's giving them their power, and what kind of long-term contracts they have for that power, because it absolutely plays a big role in a miner's ability to be profitable, wouldn't you say?
For sure. And if you actually if you actually have the capital to kind of negotiate, kind of like, you know, cut the middleman, because you would need to go a little, you would actually have to like cut a deal, like you say, with the utility company, or just like cut certain middlemen to kind of go straight to the source and say, hey, I mean, I'm not your retail customer. I'm a big guy. I can, let's negotiate something, right? Let's give me like a 2-year plan on like 7 cents a kilowatt hour, or whatever it happens to be. And you got a big paying customer. This is kind of like my business, and let's talk. But yeah, I mean, the thing with that is that that would be kind of like a big player, and definitely not like your average retail miner, right? But yeah, that's I think that would be the way to play it.
Oh, right on. Well, I wanted to take this quick second in between this conversation and address you, the audience. If you like what you're seeing, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you have a question for Daniel, throw it in the chat. We're going to get it on screen, make sure Daniel addresses it. Also, Daniel, we have another topic on board that I'd like to put at you now. I know XRP isn't your favorite digital asset, but I also know that you don't dislike it. And so I'm curious your thoughts on how important circulating supply is looking at a coin's value going forward. And I guess you could apply that to any digital asset, right? Because they all have a circulating supply of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, I mean, like I'm not a a very big fan of XRP, but I don't hate it. I mean, like it has its place in the world, and after talking with our common friend, darn it, I forgot his name.
Carlos?
Was that
Carlos? Carlos.
Is he the programmer who's also into XRP a lot?
No, Carlos is your friend. You introduced him to me. Are you talking about Frazan? You're talking about the young man, Randall, that you met at the meetup.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Randall.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Carry on.
Okay, yeah, there we go. So he actually opened my eyes a lot on like what is like the behemoth that XRP is, and not only that, but also kind of like opening up the pathway to some other to all of crypto. So as going to your question, as far as the circulating supply goes, I mean, it's interesting because I try to look first at, say, Bitcoin, right? Because he's kind of like the granddaddy of cryptos. And I try to look at fundamentals on Bitcoin and try to, correlate that with price to see if I can, find any connection. And what I see is that there's lots of things, fundamentals like news that come out that actually that price is actually unaffected by. Kind of like I remember like the a few years ago when, or if it was last year, I think it was a couple of years ago, that Bitcoin actually become traded in the CBOE on the like the Chicago exchange, which was kind of tiny. But then that same year, a few months later, it was actually it was going to be trading in the like the CME futures, which is a huge market.
Right.
And the price actually jumped a lot on the CBOE, but not so much in the CME. And I was like, okay, what gives? So that is just an example, but all of that I just say because something that to me seems very important from a fundamental level had no immediate effect on the price. So if you scale that down to other cryptos and see some of the fundamentals like circulating supply, which is, to your question, and relate that to the price of an altcoin, then, I would be like, okay, I find it important, but really, like, would it actually, have any correlation on the price? I mean, I don't know, like, just by having the Bitcoin example, it would be like, well, that would be kind of weird. but to me, I don't think circulating supply. I mean, right now with all of the adoption that crypto um, has any short term or even long term effect. And I'll tell you why. We can see that we can see that on fiat. I mean, like fiat, dollars. Like if you increase the circulating supply, that's basically more inflation, and we can see the effect of that, throughout the years and the history. But that is because it's really very it's used so much that you can actually you can actually take into account, you can actually average out all of the spikes and the dumps and all that stuff, and you can see kind of like a more or less clear behavior. But when you look at cryptos, it's kind of like a very small boat in a big ocean. So a large wave can move the boat a lot, and you think it might be because of the changes in circulating supply, but it might be something else. So that's a very painfully long answer to, I don't think it really matters in the short.
Well, I'll tell you what. Hey, so Dan, I have the other side of that debate, right? Now, I agree with you about Bitcoin currently. However, there are digital assets that are being used for a specific purpose. They are in utility. In other words, they are in use today. For instance, case in point, XRP. Now, I got to take a real quick time out. I just got a call from the producer. Aha. Okay, great. So I'm going to just finish this thought. XRP is being used in XRP to fiat corridors right now, and they are establishing baselines of usage on a daily basis. Circulating supply does matter, right? Circulating supply matters. It matters a lot, especially as those corridors grow, right? If the corridors grow, the demand for the supply grows. Circulating supply does matter. To help me with this topic and to join in on the Bitcoin halving discussion, I want to bring in YouTube's very own Tony from Thinking Crypto.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Tony.
Hey,
welcome to the show. Tony, this is a friend of mine from Costa Rica, an incredibly talented technical Bitcoin bull named Daniel.
Hey, Daniel. Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you, Tony. Likewise.
So, Tony, I was just getting into the topic of the XRP circulating supply. I just threw a banner on the screen. This is my back of the envelope calculation. So if it's true that there's 50.5 billion XRP in circulation, this is everything excluding the escrow accounts that Ripple holds. You take a look at Chris Larson's 7 billion, Arthur Brito's 5 billion, Jed McCaleb's restricted 4 to 6 billion balance. I'm not totally sure exactly what it is. And the 7 billion that Ripple holds, that's a total of 25 billion. That means there's only about 25.5 billion slushing around between exchanges, companies that are using the token, and holders like us. Do you think knowing circulating supply is important to be able to forecast appreciation going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you saw my interview with CZ, and we talked about you guys just acquired CoinMarketCap. Are you going to help address some of the issues there? It's starting with XRP circulating supply. So absolutely, I think we can get that number up to close to what it is. It can really help us understand what we're dealing with and forecasting and looking towards the future in the market, and specifically for XRP. So I think it's certainly critical, and I'm hoping Ripple, I'm certainly on their end, they're trying to get these things addressed publicly and have the right data out there. Agreed.
So I don't know how much of the show you caught, Tony, but the first topic we jumped off with was the Bitcoin halving. Do you have a take or a spin? What's your what are you thinking about when you think of the Bitcoin halving coming up?
Well, I think everybody's expecting that price increase. My gut tells me, as in we've seen historically, it's not going to happen right away. We're going to see some bullish activity. Price will probably go up, but will it trigger that another all-time parabolic run-up? I don't think so. The last bull run happened about over a year after the Bitcoin halving, which took place in 2016. I am, of course, if it happens sooner, of course, the better, right? I think everybody would be happy, but just being realistic, I think it's going to happen after that. But certainly excited for this halving because it's going to trigger some more bullish momentum, I would say, and take us further into kind of a higher prices, but over time. And I'm excited to see what this yields, because if you look at the trend, the charts, right, it keeps going up. You have your cycles, bull, bear, accumulation phase. And what's interesting, and I've been talking about it lately, we're seeing a doubling down of big money into Bitcoin mining. So it's actually not scaring people away because the difficulty rate's getting harder, right, to mine, and you're not going to get rewarded with as many Bitcoins. It's going to get cut in half. So when I see in Texas, the biggest Bitcoin mining farm being built ever, Whinstone, and then Peter Thiel's Layer 1 is also setting up shop in Texas. Something's going on here. Do they know something we don't know? I think they're expecting higher prices because how is it going to be profitable? I think they're looking towards a over $20,000 Bitcoin, of course, as kind of like an eventual low, so to speak, right, in relative to the high. So that's what I'm excited to see. And then we just found out, Binance is starting their own Bitcoin mining pool. Something's going on.
That is huge. That is friggin' huge. Folks, do you have a question for Daniel? Do you have a question for Tony? Put it in the chat. Carolina, make sure we get it on screen. We address it. I was going to take just a shot in the dark here, and that is electricity in Texas low cost? I mean, are these, I'm curious how close to the power production plants that these monster mining operations are being built. I'm really curious about that. Did Tony, in your research on that, or Daniel in yours, did anybody get like a geographic location? Do we know the name of the small towns or cities? Well, they wouldn't be cities, they'd be towns where these things are being built.
As far as I remembered at the top of my head, it was Rockdale, Texas, or Rosdale, one of those. I got to pull it up. Yeah, that's a great question, Jerry. We're in proximity to maybe a power plant or whatever it is, but we know there's a lot of the energy is cheaper down there, and a lot of solar power opportunities. So I could see that some of that being subsidized via solar, and but that's a great question. That's something I'll probably need to research. I don't know, Daniel, you know about that.
Well, we have a question from the audience that I'd like to address here real quick. It's Stephen Fav. He asked Daniel, "Hey Daniel, do you own any XRP?"
Yes, I do, Steven. It's it's a fairly small amount, but I do own it, and I've kind of done some transactions, and then kind of seeing that, like in Monero, you actually normally use a destination tag, so it's kind of like an extra interesting thing on like sending XRP and all that stuff. So yeah.
Hang on a second. What do you mean destination tag? You don't need a destination tag to use XRP unless you're dealing with an exchange or something that individualizes your wallet.
Oh, okay. So you actually
taught me something. A unique feature for XRP. That's the exchange or the entity's thing.
Oh, you actually are like educating that on me, Jerry. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we do some education on this show.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't know about that. Because that's what I see on Exodus even. Like Exodus actually, well, it says it's optional, right? But then, when actually dealing with exchanges, it actually tells you, hey, specify your destination tag. So, yeah, thanks for the tip.
Yeah.
So on the, on the Bitcoin mining farm, yeah, that's a good question. I didn't know about the specific town. And Tony, is it was it actually Bitmain, the guys who set up shop on like Texas for the mining farm? Because I thought it was like actual Bitmain, like the OEM for the miners, or is it another company?
It's another company to my knowledge, and I just looked up. It's Rockdale, Texas. It's a Whinstone, and then there's investors from Japan, which is interesting. And Jerry, I think you probably understand this connection. SBI Holdings is they're going to be leasing some mining or investing into it, but they're also bullish on XRP and Ripple. And then the other one is this GMO Internet, the Japanese internet conglomerate or something like that. And then Peter Thiel has his own thing with Layer One. I don't know about the guys in Bitmain, Daniel. It's a great question. I think there's some digging needed to be done here. But Bitmain, of course, they're in China. They got the big mining pool there. So I could see there's some sort of like economic power struggle here over Bitcoin's control coming. It's even though the U.S. doesn't have clear crypto regulations yet, they're allowing this to happen. And of course, all the big players are building financial products behind Bitcoin.
Right. So, hey, I want to put this out there to you guys. ADAF says, my question is, proof of work is slow, costly, wasteful, and can be 51% attacked. Why wouldn't anyone support that system beyond a very short-term wealth extraction? Which, if I was to paraphrase that, is why is Bitcoin so sought after if it has so many areas of detraction? It has so many negatives if you go down the checklist.
So I think that at the very beginning, it made sense for proof of work just because like everybody owned a computer, but not everybody owned Bitcoin just because it wasn't as much, it wasn't really known, right? So, you could just like, plug your computer and just mine Bitcoin off of, any laptop or, PC at that moment. And it was, you didn't need to really trust anybody like, hey, send me some coins, or you didn't need to know the guy who had a lot of Bitcoin and was just like, throwing them around like candy. So I guess, that actually made sense at the very beginning. And just because Bitcoin is just like, so large right now, it has, lots of different players and actors with different responsibilities that trying to change Bitcoin into something else. It's actually going to be, really hard. Just, take a look at, 2017, Bitcoin Cash. And then, well, in that moment, they actually were going for, was it Segwit 2X? They wanted to do both. They wanted to like raise the block size, and they also wanted to put Segwit into action, and that resulted in a fork. So, and that was still proof of work. That was just like making bigger blocks. But then Bitcoin Core said, well, let's actually do let's actually just do something that is soft forward, something that is backward compatible, so we don't break anybody who doesn't go with us. And I think that's actually, something a very sensible decision. So, trying to like, from a technological standpoint, and from a consensus standpoint, right now, changing Bitcoin is going to be really hard, and it's just grown very big, and it's going to be, hard for it to change, I think.
Right on. Hey, Tony, do you see the question? Wait, is that the same question? It says Tony. Tony, will you address that?
Sure. The one is CZ going to add volume of, oh, sorry, guys, a siren behind me. Hold on.
No worries.
So it's easy going to add volume of SBI VC to CoinMarketCap. So in my interview, he said he would look into it. I'll certainly follow up with him, but of course he's got like 100 things on his plate. So I can certainly follow up with him, but he said he will look into that for sure.
Right. Now, I also saw a question right before this. It said, Tony, do you think the price of XRP is going to be higher at the end of the year?
Well, did you guys know my name is Nostradamus? I can predict the future. That's hard to tell. And I think at this point, realistically, the market moves with Bitcoin. And
Hey guys, I'm sorry about that. I got a call, so my phone decided to kick me out.
Yeah, Daniel, no problem, no problem. Continue, Tony. Continue, because this I think is going to lead to what I believe is a really important topic. Keep going, Tony.
Sure. So right now, everything moves with Bitcoin for the most part. Yes, there are outliers. You have certain coins that'll pump and all of that and do well. But for the higher percentage of the market and the movements, it's tied to Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin increases, all coins move with it. Bitcoin decreases, all coins move with it. So until we have true decoupling, XRP goes on some global scale where adoption or whatever it may be, and there's clear crypto regulations, maybe you'll see decoupling there. But everything is going to move with Bitcoin. So it all depends what Bitcoin does. And I mentioned just before that, I don't know what's going on outside, cops and robbers.
You're in New York. It happens.
Yeah. That if a parabolic run up probably won't happen until next year. Just my opinion, but I could be wrong. I hope it happens soon. And I think the altcoins will follow. And by that time, maybe we see more adoption of XRP, right? Because we've been seeing the news about adoption, MoneyGram, and then who else is going to come next? Maybe Western Union, and those type of things trigger a run up for XRP. So to say, I don't know if it's going to go higher at the end of the year. I certainly hope so, but it's hard to tell, and we are in uncertain times. We're in uncharted territory. I don't think we've ever been through a pandemic in the crypto market, right, in a short lifetime. So
I agree. Now we got another question from the chat. IMO, POW is easy to centralize and POS is easy to manipulate. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know what that means. I'll leave it to you two, because I'm no genius. I'll leave it to you two guys to try to figure out what that is.
Can I add to what Daniel was saying earlier about, someone was talking about proof of work, and it's in line with this. And folks are quick to call out, well, Bitcoin uses a lot of energy and it can be 51% attack. Here's the thing, though. It is the first of its kind, and its pros outweigh its cons. I think it's easy to go down the rabbit hole of the negatives, but you have to weigh everything in a balance here, right? Its attributes, does its benefits outweigh the cons? And I think it does, especially in the world we live in right now. That's why, even though you may be, oh man, this doesn't make sense, it uses so much energy, I care about the environment. I get that. And that's a valid concern, not diminishing that concern at all, right? But its benefits of being a hedge, digital gold, the first of its kind, the branding, I think, even though it's not 100% decentralized, it has a high percentage of decentralization principles. So you gotta weigh these things in balance. Don't be just, well, I hate Bitcoin. It's proof of work and it's 51% attacked and all that. Yes, but look at the other side of it, and you gotta weigh those things.
I agree, Tony. I don't think anybody on this channel on OTC, whether it be live or the OTC standard, supports tribalism. I mean, obviously, we're very kind of XRP centric. Not because Bitcoin is bad, just because of what we feel is the real true upside of XRP. Now, I have exposure to BTC. I've never been anti-BTC. I even see a day, even if the utility elements don't come into play and it's not really appropriate or economically feasible to use it as a peer-to-peer electronic payment system. But even just, at the very least, a collectible, the very first blockchain, there's only ever going to be 21 million, and we know a bunch of them are lost. Can you imagine the cocktail parties 15 years from now, wealthy people talking about, well, yeah, I just got a Bitcoin off the black market. I got one of them Bitcoins. You know what I mean? That's a crazy thought. Let's take this from Doc Callum, I apologize. Is there any way at all to find out SBI VC volume except hoping CoinMarketCap will post it? Oh, man, I'll tell you, I don't know. How about you, Tony?
If they have some kind of API set up, we can tap into that. That's something you probably have to research. I don't know if they have an API built yet. I'm assuming they do, like other exchanges, and you can pull that data out. Just everything is in Japanese. So we'd have to kind of play around there, maybe message some of the folks, Mr. Yoshitaka Kitao, maybe he answers on Twitter, but tapping into the API and seeing, what volume, or if maybe they release some sort of quarterly report on it, But I'm assuming they would eventually move to an API setup like other exchanges, so CoinMarketCap, these other people can pull it in.
I agree. That's eventually. Now, Crypto Eddie, our incredible Crypto Eddie, who's got her boots on the ground in Tokyo, she says, as of today, no. And when you go back through the SBI quarterly reports, they'll talk about things like percentages, but not actual numbers as it pertains to volume. So they'll say quarter over quarter, we increased by 15%. Okay, that's great, but what does that mean? 15% of what? 15% of 15 or 15% of 15,000? What are we talking about here? So it's a real crapshoot. I have always thought in the back of my mind that SBI was going to be the one that really drove this sucker home. And you know what? It's kind of been a big nothing burger as it pertains to the retail price today. Now, that's not to say 2 months from now they couldn't make some public announcement, turn that API switch on and go, hey, look at what our SBI remit company's been doing in XRP volumes. Look at what our friggin' SBI FX thing is doing. Look at what our SBI virtual trade, VC trade entity has been doing, and the world would just go nuts. But until then, I don't know. It's kind of feels like a big nothing burger. And I thought it was our Babe Ruth in the lineup of things happening for XRP.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think I have the same sentiments that, I think we all had high expectations, but it didn't happen the way we expected it. But I do understand in business, crawl, walk, run. I've lived this startup life, so I understand it. Sometimes there's things that need to be done and put into place. And SBI, as an existing financial conglomerate before crypto, before virtual currency, before Ripple, right? They got other things going on. But I'm sure they're working on it. However, part of my gut just tells me, I don't know if, Ripple and these folks are holding back as well, because there's just so much uncertainty in the United States. There's not clear crypto regulation. So let's say they do open the floodgates, right? And then all of a sudden the price of XRP skyrockets to $10. Then all of a sudden Chris Larson and all these guys become trillionaires again, like in 2017. Maybe they are trillionaires, but you know what I mean? As the price increases, their value. So do they become the richest people on the planet all of a sudden, the most valued company on the planet? What's going to happen, right? So I think there's certain conversations that are going on between Ripple and DC politicians and SEC and CFTC. So I think certain things are being held back because there's not clarity yet. And what would happen if that price skyrockets again? I think you'll probably have some people up in arms, security, lawsuits. You'll see all those things times 100, right? So I think that the lack of regulations, maybe, and that's just, my opinion. I could be completely off, but I think there's something going on, still conversations going on. And we know Ripple's visited, the people who Ripple's visited the White House, and they've talked to Jay Clayton and all these people. The logs show it, right? That there's no arguing that. So I think that's just my opinion, and I think some things are being held back, but I could be wrong.
Interesting. We got a comment from the chat. Evil asks, or no, he makes a statement. He says, proof of stake is easily manipulated by the same financial elite sharks because they can buy the market and manipulate it easily. Now, I'll tell you, I am no expert in proof of stake. I have a rudimentary understanding of the protocol and how it's supposed to work as it pertains to tokens that you have. You stake with a governance team pool group, and they'll vote, and the amount of tokens that are in that pool represents that many votes. It's very similar to if you went to a shareholders meeting of a large publicly held corporation, the number of shares you have or how many votes you get to apply to the matters at hand that are being voted on. Do you either of you have a take on this POS? And I think it's relative because Ethereum is soon to be trying to make a switch over to proof of stake, and there's been a lot of talk about that recently. Daniel, Tony, anybody want to chime in on proof of stake?
Daniel, you can go.
So, yeah, thanks, Tony. Yeah, so I actually have experience in masternodes, which is I understand very similar to proof of stake. The only difference is that with masternodes you have a set minimum. Well, I guess with proof of stake you do as well. But to the question, yeah. So, and I've had this conversation with another developer for crypto here in the Costa Rican community, in which which one is more easily manipulated, proof of stake or proof of work. So with basically the main idea that I've heard that makes proof of work not as easily manipulated than proof of stake is because with proof of work, if you want to do like a 51% attack, you actually have to pay the electric bill at the end of the month. There's this external factor that needs to be taken into account. Whereas in proof of stake, you can basically just FUD your way into existence, and then the market drops the price of the coin, and then some evil entity will say, okay, now I'll buy the dip, right? And then now I hold a large percentage of the tokens, and then I can possibly FOMO just as I FUD'd everybody. I don't know, releasing fake news or just like buying some articles at some pertaining like Cointelegraph, to just say one at the top of my head, right? And then just rise the price. That may be a possibility. Or even just like getting to bed with an exchange and saying, or with market makers, right? And then just market make your way out of existence. So yeah, that's an easier way, and it wouldn't probably cost you as much as you would need to pay. You would not need to pay the electricity at the end of the month. So that's a few of the factors that I've got in my mind.
Wow, Tony, were you hip to that whole thing that it's he who has the most coins wins? If I was to make it extremely simple, if I had to make it Jerry, so that Jerry could understand it, it sounds a lot to me like he who has the most coins in that are actually staked will get to make the decisions.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that further iterations of proof of stake. A lot of these things are in version 1.0, which you're going to see the flaws, right? As Daniel just pointed out. Yeah. So I'm hoping version 2.0, as these things get perfected, kind of trial and error, makes, it fixes a lot of the issues. And to Daniel's point of someone coming with a lot of cash and also being able to FUD the market and manipulate the price that way. So I'm hoping, knowing the flaws, that version 2.0 and 3.0, these things get resolved, and or maybe there's something beyond proof of stake that's better. But I think they're going to try it. They're going to see how it works, and if there's blatant manipulation and it's uncontrollable, then we have to kind of go back to the drawing board and see what's the best thing to do here for ETH.
Right. So there's a question on the board, and it's from JDAF. He states, what if China commandeers the 4 mining pools to attack the network? Well, that's a big what if. I'm almost scared. I don't know enough about it to comment on it, but maybe either of you do.
You can go, Tony. Oh, you want me to go? Okay.
Yeah, you go, Daniel. Daniel, you might know more than that.
So this is just a parenthesis. I cannot hear, for the weirdest thing, I cannot hear Tony on my phone. I can hear him on YouTube. So if I step into Tony while he's speaking, it's because of that weird thing. So yeah, just so you know. Anyway, so to that point, yeah, I mean, so remember that China has a lot of mining pools that, or not a lot of mining pools, like few mining pools that have a lot of hash rate, but they do not own the miners. So there's mining pools and there's actual miners. They may be the same, they may be located in China, quite possibly because of the, electricity. Although, there's also Genesis Mining, right, which they're in Iceland. And I don't know in which pool they're at, right? But, if just to, follow the point, there's this mining pool. And if like the 4 major mining pools actually, do something, run malicious code or whatever, and then the actual miners actually find out about it, they'll just switch pools. And going back in history, when Bitcoin was, much younger, there were certain pools, I can't remember the names right now, but there were certain pools that were actually approaching 50% of the total hash power. So internally, proactively, they said, let's split up because we don't want this to become too centralized. They were actually very sensible about the matter that decentralization was a big deal because that's basically what, made Bitcoin different from any other digital currencies at that time. So I would assume that if there was kind of a coordinated attack on that subject, the miners themselves would see that as something bad, and they would say, why would I, a miner who needs to sell the Bitcoin for a living, want the price to go down just because there's a lot of mining pools trying to hurt Bitcoin? I'll just split because I want my Bitcoin to be worth something when I sell them. So that's my take on it.
Well, I kind of read the question. This is how I interpreted the question. What if the Red Army were to surround the actual buildings where the miners are in China and say, okay, we gave you guys a chance at capitalism. We don't think it's working. We're going to commandeer these and take these for the state. They are now going to be all the property of the Great Republic of China, the People's Republic of China, or whatever. That's how I read his question to be. Although your answer was incredible, I had no idea that there was an actual planned disbursement of geographically located machines, and they did that to combat centralization issues. I've never heard that story before. So regardless of how it jived with the question or if the question was, in line with that was a good piece of information. Tony, would you say that was pretty cool?
Yeah, for sure. And I love that Daniel highlighted that the difference between the individual miners and the pools. And, there's a big operation in Iceland as well. And we're seeing what's being built here in the U.S., right? What's going to happen in Texas and other states in the U.S. So I think we're going to have a bit more diversification when it comes to the mining and different miners. And it looks like the U.S. wants to get involved because they're allowing these big companies to set up shop. With that question, is that a possible scenario? Yes. How likely is it? I would say not likely, but hey, we live in a world where almost anything is possible these days.
Who knows? So I'll tell you what, we got another question from Stephen Fav, and he says, Jerry and Tony, do you see regs coming this year or next? I'm telling, this is what I'll put in my little piece because I know Tony can really talk to this. This is what I see. I see groups. Matter of fact, there's a group of 11 politicians right now in Congress stating to the Treasury, we need DLT technology now to serve the citizens of the United States in the disbursement of the aid funds that we've allocated. Okay, so we've got that. We've got 23 bills being crafted to put on the floor of the House, all pertaining to cryptocurrencies. We have monster organizations like the FATF, the World Economic Forum, and as well as the IMF and World Bank, all putting out documentation that DLT has a place in this system. Will that turn into regs that are favorable for us? I don't know. Tony, I want to shoot it over to you because I know you can expand upon this.
Yeah, I personally think we will see regulations this year. I think Mnuchin earlier this year around in Davos at World Economic Forum, all the leaders were there. He said coming soon. So I think we'll see it this year. Maybe they got a bit sidetracked because of the whole pandemic situation. But to your point, there's still a lot of bills being introduced to Congress right now, and various things, right? Talking about sending stimulus money via stable coins or whatever it is, CBDCs. And I think they're going to want to put it out because both the US and China, many other countries are looking to get their central bank digital currencies going. So I think they'll want to have that framework in place, at a launch of their central bank digital currencies. I as far as favorable, it's hard to tell because Mnuchin comes off sometimes like I'm going to take crypto down, but at the same time, follow the money. I don't think Fidelity and all these guys who have backdoor connections with politicians and a lot of regulators are going to be investing money if they know it's all going to come collapsing 9 months later, right? Follow the money. We know how it works here. I don't like the system of politicians being able to get campaign donations from these big corporates because then they end up doing the bidding of those folks. But that is what it is. I don't want to get to that rabbit hole. But under that system, I don't think Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, backed the New York Stock Exchange are going to be building Bitcoin products and then holding Bitcoin, and all of a sudden crypto regulations come out and the whole thing collapses. No, I think it's going to be right. I think there's going to be regulations, sure, protect consumers, KYC, AML, all that stuff, making sure you're not using crypto for terrorism and all that. And I think they're going to probably try to, I don't know, maybe they'll try to put some sort of accredited investor gatekeeping type thing. I have no idea, but I don't think it's going to be negative for crypto, honestly. Just my opinion.
Well, I'll tell you, Tony, I don't know if you know this or not. Daniel and I are both well aware. So in the US, you have all this incredible infrastructure, these great companies doing stuff in the digital assets, and a butt ton of US dollar liquidity going into digital assets. We're down here in Costa Rica. We have favorable regulations, right? Our Ministry of Finance says, bring it. Bring it. Matter of fact, you want to pay your employees in Bitcoin? Not a problem. Just make sure they are aware that they're doing it at their own risk, right? So we've got all the regs ready to go. We're open and ready for business, yet we don't have the monster companies building the infrastructure or the liquidity to really be a hub. And that's a shame because Costa Rica is very business friendly. Wouldn't you say, Daniel?
I may have to disagree a little bit on you.
Oh, please do.
I do agree though, and you're totally correct in that government-wise, government says, crypto's not illegal. I mean, you can do it. Like what you said is totally fine. Like in October 2017, actually, like the actual central bank said, we're cool with crypto. It's not illegal. Like everybody can just like do it. And the central bank said it's not up to us to regulate it because we don't consider it a currency, and our business as a central bank is a currency. But then you have these silos, right? Which I believe the U.S. also has. There's a lot of like I want to say companies. There's a lot of institutions in the government that have certain responsibilities, and sometimes those responsibilities overlap. And it's like, well, because it's a currency, it's not up to me. Well, but you actually take care of the terrorist thing, so it is up to you. But so there's this really overlapping confusion. but at least they're saying we are cool with it. Just pay your taxes, right? However, the thing is that when it comes to regulation wise, it's not really prosecuted or anything like that. It is confusing a little bit because you don't know really who to report or whatever. But at least you will not go to jail for using cryptos or taking cryptos. Problem is, banks actually don't like it, because not because it's illegal, but because they see it as a very big risk, because they see the news and say, oh, is crypto used for money laundering? They still watch Fox News and CNN, and they subscribe to all of the things that sell on crypto. And even though like you have CNBC like actually saying, well, crypto is a really cool asset and all that stuff, there are still negative news, and banks are actually very sensitive to that because they don't want to be fined. They don't want to be fined by the government, saying, well, you actually didn't do your KYC really well because this customer of yours operates with crypto, and we find that actually some sort of risky, albeit not illegal. So banks don't really like that. And if you're a business, you need a crypto-friendly bank, which in Costa Rica, unfortunately, we do not have. And yeah, that's kind of a sad story. But at least, like you said, I mean, it's not really illegal. The only two countries, by the way, just for the listeners, the only two countries that I'm aware right now in the Americas that actually ban or outlaw crypto outright are Bolivia and Ecuador. Outside of that, there's no saying like you will not go to jail or you will not be sued for like owning and just like using cryptocurrency. Like the governments are fine with that. But going through all the way through the business, that's another story.
Well, I always knew we were going to have a problem with Ecuador. Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. I hope the audience got a ton out of you being here. I know that I did. You're a good friend. I hope to talk to you soon. My brother, Pura Vida.
But yeah, thanks a lot, Jerry, for having me here. And very nice speaking with you, Tony.
Likewise. Take care, Daniel.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao, my brother. So, Tony, any parting shots? Last comments, things that you want to make sure you get out there. Now, if in case some of the folks that are here now weren't here at the beginning when you popped in, Tony's got an incredible channel, but Tony just did a really good interview. I mean, really good interview with CZ from Binance. The guy, I think, in the private sector business of crypto is probably my favorite dude. Obviously, I don't consider Ripple as part of that. CZ, though, with what he's done with Binance, the vision that he has, the way he deals with people, he's best in class. And the fact that you got to sit down with him and have an incredible interview, as an interview guy, I'll tell you, I'm envious. So my hat's off to you, Tony. That was a huge get.
Thanks, Jerry. I was hoping to get and talk to him. There's a lot of, because he's so popular and well known, Binance is the largest crypto exchange. There's a lot of things that are said, and I wanted to just hear from him and get to see what he's like, and just speaking to him. And he's a pretty humble guy. He comes from a very humble background. And you couldn't tell you're talking to like a crypto billionaire. Like, just seems like a regular guy, which is nice. And to your point, he's doing some great things. I think he's a great visionary. He sees things and he goes with it. And even though, he may not know how well it will do, but Binance is really being the leader in many different things, and a lot of exchanges are following them. So just even with this whole Bitcoin mining pool thing that they just started. So that was a cool interview. And I like I said, I asked him about the XRP circulation and with CoinMarketCap, said he's going to look into it. So I'll definitely follow up with him and see if I can get some updates and update all you guys as well.
Well, thank you, Tony. Big fan of your show. Keep doing what you're doing. Like I told you when we were on the roundtable, I'm so glad that you came back to really start pumping out the content again. I know you needed a little break, but now that, we need you now more than ever going forward, because, man, nobody can predict what's going to happen next. The whole world is in crazy town. and navigating this, we all kind of need each other. So I lean on you. I hope that you lean on the chain, and that together we'll continue to provide the greater crypto audience with just good, sound info, stuff we're not making up, connecting 25,000 dots that might not even be there. So thank you for what you do, man. And I hope that you'll be open to coming back again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely, Jerry. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you for what you're doing, and happy to come back anytime you want me to.
All right. Pura vida, my friend.
Thanks, Jerry. Take care.
Ciao, Tony. So, Carolina, I'm trying to unmute your mic.
Okay, there I am.
All right. What did you think? How'd the show? You were real busy over there on the back side of the back office of this thing, huh?
Oh yeah, yep. It was wonderful having Tony and oh, I forgot your friend's name just that quick.
Daniel. Tony and Daniel.
Say again.
Tony and Daniel.
That's right. I'm sorry about that, Daniel. Yeah, it's very nice. It's good to have them on, and I learned a couple of things. Full of knowledge. It's just awesome to have them aboard.
I think so too. So many incredible people pop into the streams here on OTC Live, and I want to thank each and every one of you. For those that are catching it on replay, again, thanks for catching the show. We're really, really, really excited to be a part of your life in whatever way that is. We want you to know that we're going to come back at you next week, 8 p.m. Eastern time, for another episode of Market Conversations. Carolina, what do you say we hit that incredible graphic and pop on out of here?
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks for coming in.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.